Oh, you're here. Good. I've got another betrayal story for you. Sit down. They told me I was blind. They told me I was throwing my life away. But I kept defending her until the night I realized it'd all been right, and I'd been nothing but her fool. My name's Michael. I'm 32, living in Denver, working as a civil engineer. I met Claire at a friend's cookout. She wasn't like anyone else there. Everyone else was swapping polite jokes, sipping drinks, half distracted by their phones. Claire? She was the loudest laugh in the yard, the sharpest comment in every conversation, the one who didn't just join the debate but dominated it. She had fire. She challenged everything I said, teased me, made me defend my every word, and instead of annoying me, it lit me up. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't just blending into the background. From that day on, I was hooked. Claire had this magnetic energy that drew people to her. You never had to guess what she was thinking. She'd tell you straight, with no filter, no apologies. She was fearless, and I admired that. I'd always been the cautious one, the planner, the guy who measured 3 times before cutting once. Claire made me feel reckless in the best way. Of course, not everyone saw her the way I did. My parents thought she was too much. My mom pulled me aside one Thanksgiving and whispered, "She talks down to you, Michael. That's not love." My dad was blunter. "She'll eat you alive, son." My friends weren't kinder. Ryan, my closest friend, once told me over beers, "She's not with you, man. She's above you, talking down. Can't you hear it?" But I didn't hear it. Or maybe I chose not to. Every time someone criticized Claire, I doubled down. "You don't know her like I do." I'd snap. "She's strong. She's confident. You just don't get it." I defended her to everyone, every single time. Because to me, defending her was proof of how much I loved her. And honestly, it made me feel noble, like I was the only one who truly understood her, the only one who could handle her fire. When we got married, I thought I'd won. I remember standing at the altar, staring at her in that dress, thinking everyone said she'd never settle down, but she chose me. That thought alone drowned out all the doubts that should have been ringing in my ears. Our marriage started with small compromises that all seemed to fall on my side. Claire hated doing laundry, so I did it. She said grocery shopping was boring, so I handled that too. She joked she wasn't good with money, so I took over bills, rent, budgeting, all of it. None of it felt like a burden at the time. I told myself that taking care of her was what love looked like, that being the guy who carried the weight was my role, my purpose. If she snapped at me, I brushed it off as her fiery personality. If she teased me in front of others, I told myself it was just her sense of humor. Every red flag turned into a reason for me to prove my loyalty. And the more people doubted her, the more determined I became to shield her from their judgment. Looking back, I see how lopsided it was. I was pouring everything into the marriage, my time, my energy, my pride, while she gave me just enough affection to keep me hooked. But at the time, I didn't care. Every chore I did, every bill I paid, every defense I made on her behalf, it all fed this belief that I was the better man, because I could handle her when no one else could. That was my blind spot, my downfall. I thought defending Claire made me a hero. I thought it proved I was strong enough for her, loyal enough, dependable enough. What I didn't realize was that every time I defended her, I wasn't protecting her. I was excusing her, excusing things I should have seen for what they really were. I thought love meant standing by her no matter what. But standing by her meant standing in quicksand. The more I dug in, the deeper I sank. And I didn't know it yet, but the humiliations were coming, one after another, each one sharper than the last. They would strip away the illusions I built around her, peel back the fences I used to shield her, and leave me staring at the truth I'd been too stubborn to admit, that all the people I thought were wrong had been right about her all along. Married life wasn't perfect, but I kept brushing off the cracks, until one night at a friend's party, she turned those cracks into open wounds. It was Ryan's birthday, my closest friend since high school. He'd rented out a rooftop lounge downtown, strung with lights, music humming through hidden speakers, laughter spilling into night air. Claire and I walked in, and I felt a flicker of pride. This was the life I wanted. Good friends, good times, my wife on my arm. The moment we got there, though, Claire pressed her purse into my hands. "Hold this, would you?" she said, already striding toward the bar. I told myself it was no big deal. Husbands carry purses all the time, right? Still, I felt the strap heavy in my hand as she waved across the room like she was a star of the show. 10 minutes later, she was snapping her fingers at me from across the circle of Ryan's friends. "Babe, can you get me another drink? Extra lime this time." I smiled, nodded, and went. When I got back, she didn't even look at me, just took the glass mid-sentence, continuing her story about how her office was a disaster without her. I stood beside her, invisible. I told myself it was fine. She liked attention. She liked being the center of things. Carrying her bag, fetching drinks. That was just me being supportive. That's what I thought until the moment it all turned. Ryan had gathered a group near the fire pit. Old friends, new friends, co-workers. Claire slipped into the circle effortlessly, laughing, tossing her hair, feeding off the spotlight. I was at her side, purse still in one hand, my drink in the other. Then, in the middle of the story, she gestured toward me with her glass and said, "See? This is Michael, my husband, spineless as ever, but sweet, too soft for his own good." The words hit like a slap. Laughter erupted around the circle. Not cruel, maybe, but sharp enough to sting. Ryan's smile faltered for half a second before he forced it back, clapping me on the shoulder like it was just harmless fun. But the others leaned in, piling on. "Spineless, huh?" One guy chuckled. "Looks like you trained him well." Another woman smirked. "Every girl needs a puppy, right?" I laughed. God help me, I laughed. The sound was hollow, forced, like it belonged to someone else. I plastered on a grin, raised my glass, and played along. What can I say? Happy wife, happy life. Inside, though, it cut deep. Ryan gave me a look, quick, apologetic, like he wanted to say something but didn't dare. Claire was still basking in the laughter, eating it up, not even noticing the way my fingers tightened around her purse strap. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just a joke, just her being her. Claire always pushed the line. That was part of her fire, right? The thing that drew me in? If I couldn't handle a little teasing, maybe I was proving her right. But the truth is, it didn't feel like teasing. It felt like exposure. Like she'd peel me open in front of everyone, show them what she really thought of me, and let them laugh at the man who carried her bags and fetched her drinks. The rest of the night blurred. I smiled when I needed to, nodded along with conversations, and laughed when the group did. But my stomach felt like lead. I wanted to leave, but I couldn't give her the satisfaction of looking upset. So I stayed, endured, convinced myself it wasn't worth a fight. On the drive home, Claire was buzzing. Did you see their faces? God, I had them eating out of my hand. Even Ryan's boss was hanging on my every word. She was glowing with pride. I kept my eyes on the road, knuckles white on the wheel. She didn't notice, or maybe she didn't care. By the time we pulled into the driveway, I had buried the sting so deep I almost believed my own lie. It was just a joke, just Claire being Claire. Nothing to lose sleep over. But that laugh, their laugh, stayed with me. And somewhere, buried beneath my forced smile, a crack widened. I told myself the party was nothing, just a slip, just Claire pushing the line for laughs. I swallowed the sting, locked it away, and tried to believe I was strong enough to handle her fire. But a few days later, the illusion shattered when I overheard the truth meant for someone else. It was a Wednesday night. I was in the kitchen rinsing dishes after dinner, sleeves rolled up, warm water running over my hands. Claire was in the living room, phone pressed to her ear, laughing in that high, easy way she reserved for her closest friends. "Sarah, her best friend since college. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I was just there, quiet, letting her chatter fill the background while I stacked plates and wiped down the counter. But then I heard it. "Honestly," she said, her voice dropping, "he's useful, but boring. Sometimes I regret marrying him." The sponge slipped from my hand, landing in the sink with a dull splash. My chest tightened, and air was stuck in my throat. Useful, boring, regret. Those words hung in the air heavier than anything she'd said at the party. That night had been public, a performance. But this was private. This was the unfiltered version, the way she spoke when she thought I wasn't listening. And it cut deeper than any laughter in a crowded room. I stood frozen at the sink, staring at the water circling the drain. My first instinct was to march into the living room, demand an explanation, and force her to say those words to my face. But I didn't move. I couldn't. My ears burned as her voice carried on, light, casual, like she hadn't just gutted me. "Yeah, he does everything, bills, groceries, laundry. It's convenient, but God, sometimes I wonder what I'm even doing." Sarah's muffled laughter came through the speaker. Claire laughed with her. I gripped the edge of the counter, so hard my knuckles whitened. My heart was pounding, but my body felt hollow, like the ground beneath me had dropped. This wasn't a joke anymore. This was her truth. When the call ended, I scrambled to make myself look busy. I turned off the water, grabbed a towel, and dried my hands like nothing had happened. My face in the reflection of the darkened kitchen window looked pale, hollow-eyed. Claire walked in, still smiling from her conversation. "Hey, did you wash the wine glasses too?" she asked, leaning against the doorway like everything was normal. I swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "Yeah, they're done." My voice sounded steady, but inside I was trembling. She kissed my cheek lightly, distracted, already scrolling her phone. She didn't see the way my jaw tightened, didn't hear the way my heart was screaming. To her, it was just another night. To me, it was a night I stopped believing the excuses I'd been feeding myself. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling while Claire scrolled beside me. Every time she laughed softly at something on her screen, I heard those words again. Useful, boring, regret. Doubt crept in like a slow poison. But even then, I didn't confront her. I told myself loyalty meant silence, that love meant staying, that maybe she was just venting, maybe she didn't mean it. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't a slip. It wasn't a bad joke. It was the truth, the kind you don't say to your husband, only about him. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. Weeks passed after that night in the kitchen. I tried to shake off the phone call, tried to pretend those words hadn't been burned into my chest. Useful, but boring. Sometimes I regret marrying him. They echoed in the back of my mind at random times. Brushing my teeth, driving to work, folding her laundry. But I buried them. That's what I was good at. I told myself maybe she just vented, maybe she didn't mean it. I clung to silence because silence was safer than facing the truth. Then came the dinner with her friends. And this time, her ridicule wasn't private anymore. Claire had been buzzing about it all week. "You'll love this place," she said, shoving her phone in my face to show me the restaurant's Instagram. Trendy spot downtown, sleek black tables, neon lights, cocktails with smoke curling out of them. All my girls are going to be there. So Friday night, I put on my blazer, drove us downtown, and walked in by her side. The place was packed, laughter bouncing off the high ceilings, the smell of seared meat and truffle oil thick in the air. Claire's friends were already there, a table of 4 women dressed to kill, sipping martinis and snapping selfies. "Ladies," Claire sang out, sweeping over with open arms. They lit up, hugging her, kissing her cheek, greeting her like a queen returning to her court. I followed a step behind, carrying her jacket. And then it happened. Claire gestured back at me with a casual flick of her hand. "This is my puppy who pays the bills." The words dropped like a grenade. Her friends burst into laughter, heads thrown back, hands covering mouths like it was the funniest thing they'd heard all week. One even clapped the table. I caught the waiter's smirk as he poured water into glasses. I smiled. I forced a polite smile so wide my cheeks ached. Inside, my stomach clenched so tight I thought I might throw up. "Ah, he's blushing," one of them teased. Claire leaned closer to her friends, lowering her voice just enough that I could still hear. "What? It's true. He works, he pays, I play. Perfect arrangement." More laughter. Another dig. Another smirk from across the table. I sat down, folded a napkin across my lap, and nodded along like the joke didn't cut bone deep. My drink came, and I sipped it slowly, letting the burn of whiskey distract me from the humiliation heating my face. The dinner dragged on. Claire reveled in the spotlight, telling stories about her freedom, how she could buy what she wanted, travel when she wanted, live without a care because her husband handled everything. She winked at me once, as if I was in on the joke, as if it was all harmless. But it wasn't harmless. Every word chipped away at me. Her friends leaned in, laughing louder, nudging each other with every jab. "God, I need one of those at home," one said. "Where do you find a guy like that?" "He's one of a kind," Claire replied with a smirk. "But sometimes I wonder if I should have married up." That one stung worst of all. I stared at my plate, cutting into my steak with steady hands. I didn't say a word. Not then. Not in front of them. If they wanted to see a puppy, I'd give them silence. But inside, something was shifting. Because this time, I didn't brush it off. This wasn't just fire or humor or Claire being Claire. This was deliberate. A performance designed to humiliate me while she basked in the attention. As the night wore on, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to before. I didn't have to defend her anymore. She wasn't misunderstood. She wasn't fiery. She was cruel, and I was complicit because I let it happen. The thought scared me, but it also lit a spark I hadn't felt before. When the check came, I paid it without a word, as always. Her friends giggled, thanking me like I was the waiter. Claire smirked, sliding her arm through mine as we walked out. But I didn't feel like her husband anymore. I felt like a man finally staring at the edge of a cliff and realizing it was time to stop walking forward. That night, lie beside her in bed while she scrolled through her phone, I stared at the ceiling in silence. She thought she'd broken me down into a loyal, obedient shadow. But the truth was, I was starting to see her clearly. And when clarity comes, it never leaves. I thought I was numb by then. After the party, after the phone call, after the dinner with her friends. Each humiliation had burned, but I convinced myself the flames had already scarred me. I told myself she couldn't hurt me any worse than she already had. But I was wrong. The next blow came where it hurt the most, in front of the people I once defended her against. It was Sunday dinner at my parents' house. They'd invited Claire and me, along with my brother David and my sister Emily. Family dinners had always been tradition for us. Warm, familiar, full of teasing that never crossed into cruelty. I'd grown up in a house where respect wasn't optional. It was woven into how we spoke to each other. So I thought naively that maybe Claire would rein it in there, that in my parents' home, with their eyes on her, she'd treat me with something close to dignity. We arrived just after 6. The house smelled like roast chicken and fresh bread. Mom hugged me tight at the door. Dad clapped me on the back, and Claire breezed in like she owned the place. She complimented the house, kissed my mother's cheek, and sat down at the table before anyone else had pulled out a chair. Dinner started light. Emily joked about her kids, and David teased me about how long it had been since I joined their weekend hikes. For a moment, it almost felt normal. I caught my parents watching me closely, like they always did when Claire was around, but I gave them a reassuring smile. I wanted them to see I was fine. Then Claire leaned back in her chair, wine glass in hand, and dropped the hammer. "You know," she said with a smirk, "I really did marry down. The table went still. She swirled her wine, eyes sparkling with mischief. I settled. Michael's sweet, sure, but let's be honest, he's not exactly the kind of man I pictured ending up with. My fork clinked against my plate. David's eyebrows shot up. Emily froze mid-bite. My mother's lips pressed tight. My father's hand gripped the edge of the table. The air grew heavy, suffocating. I stared at Claire, heart thudding in my chest. She smiled wider, taking a sip like she hadn't just gutted me in the one place I thought was safe. Claire, my mom said carefully, that's not a very kind thing to say. Claire shrugged. Oh, I'm just being honest. Isn't honesty a good thing? She glanced at me, waiting for me to back her up, to defend her like I always did. But this time I didn't say a word. I sat there, staring at my plate, jaw clenched so tight it hurt. Inside, humiliation washed over me in waves, hotter and sharper than ever before. Not just because of what she said, but because she said it in front of them. The very people I'd spent years convincing that she was worth it. The people I told to trust me when I said she was misunderstood, that she wasn't cruel, that she loved me in her own way. And now here she was, proving them right, showing them the truth in the harshest way possible. I could feel my siblings' eyes on me, pity in their silence. My father's anger simmered just beneath the surface. My mother's heart was breaking for me, even though she'd warned me all along. Claire giggled and reached for another roll, as if nothing had happened. Relax, everyone. It's just a joke. But it wasn't a joke. Not to me. Not anymore. The rest of dinner passed in strained silence, broken only by forced small talk and the clinking of cutlery. Claire filled the gaps with stories about herself, never noticing the discomfort pressing down on everyone else. I stayed quiet, each bite of food like sand in my mouth. When we finally left, I shook my parents' hand a little too firmly, hugged my mother longer than usual. None of them said anything, but I could see it in their eyes. We told you. The drive home was silent. Claire scrolled on her phone, humming softly to herself, oblivious of the damage she'd done. Or maybe not oblivious. Maybe she knew and didn't care. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the echo of her words replaying in my head. I married down. I settled. For years, I told myself that defending her was proof of love, that loyalty meant silence, that standing by her was what made me strong. But something broke in me that night. Not a loud break, not shouting or slamming doors. A quiet one, like a rope finally snapping after years of strain. For the first time, I didn't make excuses for her. I didn't tell myself she didn't mean it, or that she was just being fiery. I let the truth settle in. She didn't respect me. She never had. And lying there in the dark, listening to her breathing beside me, I made a decision I never thought I'd make. This marriage was over. Claire still thought she had me wrapped around her finger. What she didn't know was that my silence wasn't surrender. It was preparation. The night after the family dinner, while she slept soundly beside me, I sat in the glow of my laptop screen, scrolling through legal websites. My hand shook as I typed, not from nerves, but from the weight of the decision I'd made. Divorce. The word felt heavy, final, but also strangely clean, like the word itself had the power to wipe away years of humiliation. The next morning, while Claire scrolled through Instagram in bed, I slipped out early under pretense of an early meeting. Instead, I drove to a law office downtown, a modest brick building tucked between a bank and a pharmacy. My lawyer, a calm man in his 40s with a sharp suit and sharper eyes, listened as I laid everything out. Not the humiliations, not the emotional carnage, but the facts. The finances, the property, the joint accounts. He nodded, took notes, and when he slid the stack of papers across the desk, I felt a flicker of control I hadn't felt in years. The pen in my hand felt heavier than any weight Claire had ever put on my shoulders. I signed quietly, deliberately. From that day on, every small act of silence became part of the plan. Claire kept mocking me, oblivious. At breakfast, she'd laugh while telling her friends on speakerphone how she had me trained. At the grocery store, she'd joke with the cashier about how I carried the bags like a pack mule. At night, she'd toss little barbs my way. You'd be nothing without me. You know that, right? I never flinched, never argued. I let her believe she still owned me. And every time I stayed quiet, I thought of the documents waiting in my briefcase. My shield, my weapon, my escape. Weeks passed. The final straw came on an ordinary Tuesday night. I'd just come home from work, tie loosened, ready to collapse onto the couch. Claire was on the phone again, pacing the living room. She saw me, covered the mouthpiece with her hand, and said loud enough for me to hear, "Oh, don't mind him. That's just my boring husband. The man's good for bills, not much else." Her friend laughed on the other end. Claire grinned, eyes glinting with the same arrogance I'd once mistaken for charm. But this time, I didn't force a smile. I didn't look away. I just stared at her, silent. Something in my stare must have unnerved her, because she faltered for half a second before finishing her call. When she hung up, she turned to me with her usual smirk. "What? You gonna pout again? You know I'm just kidding." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. That evening, after dinner, I walked into the bedroom, reached into my briefcase, and pulled out the neatly prepared stack of papers. I placed them on the kitchen table where she was scrolling her phone, legs curled beneath her like a queen on her throne. "Sign them," I said simply. Her head snapped up. "What is this?" "Divorce papers." I replied, calm, steady. "They've been ready for weeks." Her smirk wavered, faltered. For the first time in years, I saw her mask crack. "You're not serious," she scoffed, but her voice lacked its usual bite. I met her eyes, dead serious. She laughed, a hollow sound. "You wouldn't. You need me. You've always needed me." I didn't move, didn't blink. My silence said everything. Her laughter died. Her arrogance slipped, replaced by something I'd never seen in her before: fear. Not of me, but of losing control, of realizing the man she thought was her fool had slipped out of her grasp while she wasn't looking. "Michael," she tried again, softer now. "Come on, don't do this. We can—" I shook my head. "No, Claire, you did this. Every joke, every humiliation, every time you made me a fool in front of the people I loved. You don't get to walk it back." Her mouth opened, but no words came. For once, she was speechless. I picked up my jacket, slung it over my shoulder, and walked toward the door. She called my name once, twice, but I didn't look back. When the door shut behind me, the silence that followed wasn't heavy. It wasn't suffocating. It was clean, freeing. I walked out of that house not broken, but free. For years, I thought loyalty meant silence. But in the end, my silence became the loudest statement of all. Claire had exposed me as a fool, but I was no fool anymore. What about you? If your partner humiliated you in front of friends and family, would you confront them or go silent like Michael? Do you think he should have left sooner? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more betrayal stories like this, hit subscribe and stick around.